So welcome back, everybody. I think you'll find we're privileged tonight to have a guest speaker, Jeff Ryan, K0RM, who is the ARRL Rocky Mountain Division Director. I'm not going to say too much more and let him jump into a little more detailed bio on himself and get right to it. So Jeff, welcome to W0TLM Club meeting.
Thanks, Lauren. Good evening, and good evening all. Thanks so much for the invitation. It's a privilege to be here. I know that a lot of people like to assign the moniker of leadership to ARRL directors and section managers and positions like that. But my take on it is I'm for ARRL members, I'm your servant. I'm here to serve you, and the way that I act as your voice with the ARRL is by hearing from you. So I want to hear from you, and anything that's on your mind, anything that the league is doing, anything that you see in the news that you want to make a comment on, send it to me. Just K0RM@ARRL.org is my email address. My phone number's in QST magazine. It's real easy to get a hold of me. One of the things I really love about this position and previous positions that I've had, such as section manager, is wandering around swap fests and conventions and shaking hands with people and hearing what's on folks' mind. That is absolutely the best part of this position, is being able to interact with the members. So just a little bit about me. I've been a volunteer for the ARRL for over 20 years. Started as an AEC down in Colorado Springs, and became the emergency coordinator for Pikes Peak Aries. Did that for 3 years, and then section manager Tim Armagast shanghaied me and assigned me as the assistant section manager. I did that for 6 years, and every couple of years he said, "No, you need to run," and I kept saying, "No, you keep doing it, Tim. You're doing a great job." And so I was ASM for 6 years, and then I did run for section manager, unopposed, and it's a 2-year position. And then every second year when I ran again, it was unopposed. So I wound up being a section manager for 10 years. Then I kind of walked away from the league a little bit and got more involved with my local club up here. About 2016, I think it was, then director Brian Milashowski was elected vice president of the ARRL. So the vice director at the time, Dwayne Allen, moved up to the front row, and he reached out to me and asked me if I'd be willing to serve. And one of those things about, even though I protested, he didn't care, and had me designated as the vice director of the division. And then he resigned in 2 years after that, in 2018, and I became director and subsequently ran unopposed a couple of years ago. So I've been director since October of 2018. I've also been, active doing other things in the amateur community here in Colorado. I lived down in Colorado Springs from 91 through about 2004. And throughout that period of time, I served as director and also chair for a couple of years of the Pikes Peak FM Association. I was also a director of the Pikes Peak Radio Amateur Association. I've been a longtime member of CCARC as a delegate. I think both when I was with PPFMA and currently, I'm still a member of the Frequency Coordination Committee of the CCARC. I've been very involved with HamCon Colorado, which is the organization that puts on conventions when the Rocky Mountain Division cycles through Colorado. That actually started when I was a section manager. Jerry Verduff, AD0A, approached me when I was SM and said, "We really need to have a convention here." So we spun up HamCon Colorado and got delegates from various clubs across the state to participate, give us seed funding, and I've been involved with HamCon ever since. And I'm also currently president of Rocky Mountain Ham Radio. which is based up here in the Denver metro area, but we've got members all over the state of Colorado, as well as members in Wyoming and New Mexico. My favorite things to do in ham radios on HF is rag chewing. Occasionally participate in contests. VHF, UHF, I'm also active. I've been participating in the June VHF contest since '09, primarily with Rocky Mountain Ham Radio. My favorite activity is field day. I absolutely love field day. That's just my favorite thing. Every year I really look forward to it. And also very active with public service events throughout the year, as well as organizing them. And I've been doing that again since I was down in the Springs. And I just retired after 45 years in the telephone internet business, worked for MCI for 20 years. I worked for a company up here in the Denver area called Level 3 Communications for 10 years. And then a couple of smaller companies here in the Denver area. I've got two grown daughters with children of their own. I'm a veteran of the Air Force. I was in telecommunications in the Air Force. I'm also a private pilot. I own a Cessna 182, and I've operated aeronautical mobile, and that's a lot of fun. And then in my copious free time, I'm a musician, and like to get together. Not this year, but in years past, some of my other musician friends bring their guitars over to the house, and we'll set up all hours of the night jamming. So that's a little bit about me. I want to make this evening available for you guys to ask questions about what's going on, but I'll just go over a couple of highlights about things that are going on with the league right now. One of the things that's on the list is the FCC proposed a $50 fee, and after a lot of comments to the FCC, they reduced that to $35 license fee for 10 years. That it's going to go in effect, but they really don't have any administrative procedures set up yet to be able to collect it. So we're not exactly sure when that's going to happen. So we're kind of standing by, wait to see when that's going to go into effect. The Amateur Radio Parity Act was something that the league had been working on for a number of years, and the history of this goes back to when PRB 1 was issued by the FCC back in 2001, I believe it was. That was directed towards state and local legislatures, basically saying that local legislators could not outright prohibit antennas. They had to reasonably accommodate them because amateur radio was in the public interest, which was great. It was good for ham radio operators to be able to negotiate with cities and towns and states. And many states subsequently enacted a state version of PRV1. But this didn't affect homeowners associations. And the FCC kind of declined to get involved in that area, stating it was a private contract between the amateur radio operator and the homeowners association, and they're not in the habit of getting involved with private contracts. And then a number of years later, they kind of reversed themselves with respect to television, and basically issued a ruling that said there's a compelling public interest to allow TV antennas in HOAs because that's the way the public gets their information from the government with respect to emergencies and things of that nature. So we kind of started beating up on the FCC again and saying, hey, if you allow the public interest TV, what about public interest amateur radio? And they said, yeah, no. If Congress wants us to do that, then Congress is going to have to tell us. So the league kind of switched its attention to Congress and started working on the Amateur Radio Parity Act. It was actually going quite well until we ran up against a roadblock with a senator in Florida who objected to the legislation going forward. So it just kind of sat there. And then finally kind of fell to the ground at the end of a particular year of Congress. And then we also at the ARRL got a new board of directors came in and really had some problems with some of the language, felt that it was too limiting, that it was didn't cover a lot of the properties, especially on the East Coast, they had these things called lakefront properties, and they were kind of like homeowners associations, but they weren't. And so that there was some concern that a lot of hams were going to be left out. And so they started revamping the language, again, working with Congress, and then got up to 2020, and then COVID hit. No more meeting with Congress. So from that point until today, it's just kind of been sitting around doing absolutely nothing. I mean, the league has been working on things, but we've been unable to work with Congress. And we're hoping now in 2021, we still have friends in Congress that are willing to talk to us, and congressional staff. And as soon as they let us back in the building, we'll get back to work on that. Something that came up, albeit briefly, a few months ago was FCC enforcement advisory that non-certified radios, couldn't be used in the amateur service, and this was as a result of these Bofang radios that didn't get certified and were being sold on eBay and other web Amazon sellers, other web sellers, and they were finding themselves into the hands of unlicensed people. And FCC came out with an enforcement advisory, which was incorrect, basically saying that non-certified radios couldn't be used in the amateur service. Well, the league sent a strongly worded letter to the FCC saying, well, of course they can. Amateur radio operators have always been able to build their own radios and put them on the air as long as they comply with the emission standards that the FCC requires. And FCC didn't think about changing the advisory at all. They just kind of let it stand. And we're pretty sure that they're not going to go after any licensed amateur radio operator who has built their own radios and put them on the air. But that advisory is out there, and it caused great consternation. Spectrum threats are always out and about. Of course, the latest one is the 3 gigahertz spectrum that we lost to commercial entities. And we don't know if they're going to go after 5 gig next, but we're trying to mount a pretty strong defense against that. There was, I don't want to say significant activity, but there was activity on 3 gigahertz. My club up here in the Denver area had microwave links linking repeater sites, DMR repeater sites together on 3 gig. Not a lot, but we had a few. Most of it's on 5 gig. But there were hams that were kicked off the spectrum, and we never like to see that. So we're kind of keeping an eye on 5 gig to see if that's going to be threatened. We don't know of any other spectrum threats right now where they're going to take spectrum from us. What we're really looking at is as technology starts standing up in different areas that can affect us with respect to noise floor or interference by non-licensed types of things that keep rolling out. FCC used to really clamp down on that stuff, and they're issuing experimental licenses to entities to do all kinds of stuff right now that have the potential to interfere. And Lee keeps a pretty good eye on those things and gets involved with letters and filings to the FCC. Our attorney that does all the filings for the FCC used to work at the FCC, so he understands how it works, and he knows people in the building, and he can usually get on the phone and have conversations with folks about some of these issues, and we can get a pretty good reading on where we think things are going. Let's see what else we got going on. ARRL volunteer monitoring program is up and running. That is strictly run out of headquarters, as opposed to a lot of programs that are run at the section level and are administered by the section manager. The FCC really wanted this to be managed by the ARRL at headquarters, and so that's how it's operating. And the volunteer monitoring program has been set up pretty well according to the way the FCC wanted it set up, which includes they really didn't want the names of the volunteer monitors to be out there in public. They figured that could cause some issues. So everybody gets assigned a number now, and if there's any interference issues that members want taken care of, you just need to notify headquarters, and they'll get that information dispersed to the volunteer monitors. There's a couple of petitions that have been sitting at the FCC for a long time that the FCC filed. One is the symbol rate petition, and I think that's been out there since at least 2013. I'm not sure when we filed that. And that was a petition to regulate by bandwidth instead of by speed. A lot of digital communications techniques that can exceed 1200 baud are out there and don't use any more bandwidth. And I guess that was the original concern with limiting things by speed, is that there was a direct relationship. But there's other techniques now, and as we move into more modern techniques, it just made more sense to the league to regulate things by bandwidth, because ultimately that's what we want to do, is maintain our channels within a specified bandwidth. There's another one out there for enhanced tech privileges. That's ARRL 11828. March of 2019 was the last time that comments were submitted to the FCC. They're completely silent on these petitions. We keep asking when they're going to do something about it, and they're not even answering. They just, I guess they've got too much on their plate, and amateur radio just doesn't seem to have the ear of staff the way it used to. You talked a little bit about the field day rule for 2021, where Class D stations can talk to each other. And last year, the complaints that I received, the phone calls and the emails that I received, were from field day stations that couldn't work each other because the home stations were controlling the band. So this year, the Programs and Services Committee decided to put a 150 watts or less for Class D stations, and hopefully that'll make things a little better. This is for 2021 only. This is not a permanent rule change. Recently, the FCC asked if new VECs were needed. The league responded. The result of a 5-year survey that they had undertaken indicated that new VECs were not necessarily needed. The only struggles for getting testing done was during COVID. And of course, that was to be expected. But COVID aside, it looked like the amateur radio community is well served by the 14 VECs that are out and about right now. The ARRL board is looking at the possibility of doing electronic balloting. I'll say again, for directors, vice directors, and section managers. I'm not sure what the year was, but the league tried this a number of years ago, and the ballots that were returned actually went down. So less people participated in the election. And a lot of folks at headquarters and the directors at the time said, well, I guess that was an idea that was well ahead of its time and people just didn't want to do it. But the thinking is now that it's ripe to kind of look at this again. So the board has directed the A&F committee to review the possibility of permitting electronic balloting, which I personally think is a great idea. And we'll see where that goes. President Biden has designated Jessica Rosenworcel, who is currently sitting on the FCC, as the new chair designee, and she is subject to Senate approval. And I guess when they get around to that, that'll happen sometime soon. Recently, a couple of months, last month, FCC came out with a warning on a Sunday morning that using ham radio to commit crimes is illegal. And everybody that saw this went, really? You need to tell us this? You come to find out that the background for this according to what we've been able to find out, is that on social media in the preceding weeks, the weeks preceding when this came out, there was a lot of chatter about people buying ham radios and using ham radios for purposes that were probably going to be illegal. And I don't know why they felt the need to come out and say this, because, you know, the only people that are really going to look at this is ham radio operators. And of course, ham radio operators pretty well know that you're not supposed to use radio to commit crimes. So I think it was a little overreaching or overreacting on the part of the FCC, but you know, they felt the need to do it because of everything that was going on with the social media. Let's see what else we got here. The FCC will require email addresses on all applications beginning 6/29/2021. I don't think that's any big deal. And then last but not least on my list of things to talk about is we've got a new CEO at the league, David Menster, NA2AA, came on board in September of last year. He is drinking from the fire hose right now, as you can well imagine. David was first licensed. Let me see if I've got his stuff up. No, that's me. I put his bio here somewhere. Give me 1 second. Oh, I put it earlier. Find it. Here it is. He was first licensed in 1977. He has a BA in computer engineering. And before coming to the league, he previously served as the CIO of Unilever, and then the chief operating officer of the David Yurman Company, and then the chief executive officer of the Scott K Company. He's a contester, primarily CW, very interested in satellites and digital modes. And he has written amateur station software, both that's out there on the market and for his own station. I've gotten to know David pretty well in the last couple of months. And he seems to have a really, really good handle on what we need to be doing as a league. He is very interested. He's got really strong IT background, and he's not happy with the state of IT at the league right now, and the lack of ability to do a lot better job at serving the members and leveraging IT to do that. So that's going to be his focus. And I'm on the ANF committee, and I support that focus. And I'm trying to make sure that he gets the funding that he needs to be successful in that arena. He's got a lot of great ideas as far as leveraging social media and working with content providers, and be able to reach out and embrace new people, young people, the younger demographic. What are they interested in, and things of that nature. So I'm kind of excited about David coming on board, and I'm really looking forward to working with him. That's on my list of things to talk about, and I'll just kind of open it up for any questions anybody might have. Thanks.
Hey, Jeff, thanks. I wrote down a few questions here, and could you briefly expand on the volunteer monitoring program? I'm sure we may have a few hams here that are new and maybe haven't heard of that. So could you expand just a little bit on what that is?
Sure. Previously, there was this position called official observer, and the FCC always looked at amateur radio as a self-policing service. In other words, we kind of policed ourselves, and so they didn't have to. They would obviously step in when needed, when things rose to the level of them needing to be involved. But other than that, amateur radio operators had a tendency to police themselves. And to that end, the ARRL had this program called Official Observers, and they would work. The official observers would work with amateur radio operators that they saw were maybe operating out of band and, things of that nature, or, spurious emissions, things of that nature, to work with the amateur to remedy these things. Now, if it was malicious interference, I mean, they weren't band cops. Their job wasn't to, sanction somebody who was, being malicious. It was, genuine mistakes that were being made to try to correct that. Amateur radio has kind of gotten to the point where a lot of what's going on right now, frankly, is malicious interference, and the FCC is looking to have help in identifying some of these cases. So the new volunteer monitoring folks will still work with the amateur community in this respect, but they will, I mean, with respect to fixing spurious emissions and things of that nature, just legitimate mistakes that people are making, but also to collect information and turn it over to the FCC that they can use for enforcement purposes. And that's the main reason why the anonymity. They don't want these people to be targeted by people who are being malicious. So the program, the name Riley Hollingsworth may be familiar to many of you, but if it's not, Riley Hollingsworth was the chief enforcement official of the FCC for so many years, and he just did a great job of policing amateur radio and cleaning up the bands. He retired from the FCC, and then within a year or two, he came on the board as a vice director for the Atlantic Division. And I knew Riley when he was at the FCC. I had corresponded with him, but met him when we invited him to a convention here in Colorado and got to know him pretty well. So when he came on the board, I was like old home week. It was just great to see him. And the two of us went and sat at the bar for a while and caught up. And he was telling me all kinds of great stories. Well, when this volunteer monitoring program came along, he was just the absolute right person to stand his program up, but wanted to make sure that there wasn't a conflict of interest because he was a vice director. So he resigned as vice director, and in the league immediately hired him as a consultant to stand up this program. And he is still running it today. Eventually, he's supposed to hand it off to somebody at headquarters, but we don't know what that date's going to be yet. So Riley is fully involved. He's the one that basically interviewed over 200 candidates, to make sure that folks were qualified, that they understood the nature of the job. They're not going to be band cops because there's just no interest in that. That's just, they're not there to be punitive with people that are just making silly little mistakes and forgetting to ID or something like that. That's not what this program is about. In any manner, way, shape, or form, and he wants to make sure. I mean, he won't even accept those kinds of complaints from the field, from the volunteer monitors. That's not what they're there for. So to help us kind of rein in some of the malicious interference that's been going on, because it's really getting out of hand on some of the HF frequencies. It's pretty obnoxious, and there's a lot of it, going on repeater jamming and things of that nature too. So the idea is to be able to collect information and be able to turn it over to the FCC, because they're short-staffed. I mean, they closed a lot of field offices. They don't have the same capabilities that they used to have to be able to collect this information. So they're happy to have us help them in this regard, collect information about malicious interference, try to locate it, try to identify where it's coming from if necessary. Turn that information over to the FCC, and then they can be very specific with coming out, verifying, and then enforcing.
I'm going to ask a quick two-part question and then let other people jump in here in a second. Just out of curiosity, do you have a rough idea of what the percentage of licensed hams are currently members of the ARRL? And then I'm going to offer you an opportunity to quick give a little sales pitch of those that aren't. We've heard some good things that the ARRL is doing to represent the hobby, but what more could hams benefit from that?
Yeah, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's readily available. And I maybe as quickly as Google it and find that out. But I'd want to go, into the league's data and sort that out. So I will. I've written that down, and I'll get that information for you. There's 170,000 members of the ARRL. And I'm not sure what the amateur radio license population is right now, but we could probably look that up pretty quickly and do the math. And so that's the percentage of licensed hams. I have to remember, licenses are 10 years. Some people get a license and never use it. Some people get a license and use it for a couple of years and stop using it. So and then there's people, unfortunately, who have passed away, and the licenses are still out there. So, once we kind of take that away, you might wind up, I don't even know what that number might be off the top of my head, but let's just say it's 10,000 people. So,
Hey, Jeff, Bob.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Last time I calculated it, I think it's been pretty steady for a while. The ARRL membership represents like maybe 20 to 22% of the licensed U.S. hams. Although that's, there's some apples and oranges there because someone outside the U.S. can be an ARRL member. So, but just roughly speaking, it's like in the low 20s.
Right, and that's a fair number, and that's a good number. So the second part of your question is something that I've got an hour presentation that I can talk about some of the kinds of things that the league does. But I'll just run through them, very quickly. Well, first of all, the league is a membership organization for amateur radio in the United States, and of course, it does have foreign members, but it's the ARRL. It's for U.S. amateurs. Countries overseas have their own associations. And all of us are part of the International Amateur Radio Union. So we do have a common global organization called the International Amateur Radio Union. And incidentally, the ARRL is the international secretariat for the IARU. So we've got a lot of say-so, which what goes on with the IARU, and we've got we got a lot of muscle with that organization, rightfully so, because we're probably the big dog in the pond. Japan obviously is very, very active, so they have a lot to contribute with the IARU as well. But the league is also a nonprofit corporation, organized under the laws of the state of Connecticut. So it's a company, it's a publisher. It sells products, but it is a nonprofit corporation. So at the end of the day, everything has to get rolled back into the organization. So there's awards programs. There's DXCC contests, ARRL, VE testing, licensing, education, training, QSL Bureau, Logbook of the World, right? QST magazine, which a lot of people say that's the gold standard publication for amateur radio. Our new publication, On the Air, which is getting great success. And this thing was spun up to address to newcomers, but we very quickly, as soon as the first issue came out, people that had been around for a long time wanted to read it too, because there was valuable content, or they just enjoyed reading it. So immediately we made sure that On the Air is available on the web to all members. You can just grab it and read it. The handbook, the ARRL handbook, operating manual, license manuals, antenna books, W1AW bulletins, advocacy, spectrum defense, technical information, and then participation in international affairs. Look, this is a regulated service by the FCC, and internationally in other countries, it's regulated as well. So we only use the spectrum that our respective countries allow us to use. There's a lot of people fighting for those spectrums. I'm trying to call up an editorial that Rich Moseson, who was who is the editor of CQ magazine. He's an ARRL Life member, but he's also a critic, a very vocal critic of the ARRL. He is not afraid to slam the league when he sees things going on that he's not happy about, and he writes about them. He blogs about them, and he writes editorials. But back in July of 2016, he wrote an editorial which, for me, kind of summarizes the best reason that the ARRL exists. And I'll just read it because it's the best thing I can do. I just use his words. What he said in the editorial is, an ARRL member's $49 a year in dues buys three broad things: a magazine, which most members see as their primary benefit, a professional staff in Newington to coordinate the organization's many programs and activities, and most importantly in our book, advocacy, promoting and defending the interests of amateur radio on state, federal, and international levels. Despite its flaws, no other organization in history has been able to advocate for amateur radio as effectively as the ARRL. If it were not for the league's success in advocacy over the past 102 years, there would likely be no amateur radio service, and thus no need for magazines or staff members. So after you renew your CQ subscription, try to budget another $49 for the ARRL and help protect our hobby's future. I love it that a competing magazine ran that as an editorial. I mean, it basically says it all about why the ARRL is important. I don't think that as individuals, we would have anywhere near the effect on the FCC or be able to get done what we've done without this organization behind us. I'm a life member of the ARRL. I became a life member pretty much when I joined. I'm trying to remember when that was, but I think it was in the early 90s or mid 90s. I do believe in the league. Is it perfect? No. No. Did they make mistakes? Oh yeah. They trip over themselves quite frequently and sometimes quite publicly. But be that as it may, it's the best thing we got going to protect our hobby. So I hope that answers the question.
Let's open it up. Anybody else have questions? I got a few more that I wrote down while you were speaking, but I'll share some time here.
Okay.
This is Rich Painter.
Hi, Rich.
The club. At 0:45 this morning, there was a widespread power glitch that lasted, at least my measurements were 1.8 seconds. I detected it here at my home in Black Forest, but because I monitor a whole bunch of other locations, it also happened at the same instant and Methodist Peak out and Salida. And it also had a widespread outage on Cheyenne Mountain on one phase of the three phases. Now our equipment and Armham and others in our shack up there on Cheyenne Mountain wasn't on the phase that was affected. But Jim Vogie had sent out a note, and I said, Jim, did you know this was really widespread? My point to all of you was this: what do you think would cause such a widespread power glitch on the obviously three different utilities, fairly widespread? I don't know how wider it was, but it's something to ponder, and I don't know if any of you detected it, and it's more than what I've already determined. So I was just throwing that out to the group to ponder.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. I don't know enough about how these companies are connected to the grid and if they all buy from the same source, and I don't know enough about it to know what the commonality between these companies may or may not be. So I just better stay quiet because I don't know enough to talk about it. Any other questions?
Hey, Jeff, is Bob.
Yeah, Bob.
Maybe a little bit more about the On the Air program. I mean, that's a new magazine, but they've wrapped a bunch of other material around that. And do you have any data on that? Like how many people are electing to get On the Air as the print version versus QST, that sort of thing?
We're looking at that at now. And Bob, what we've done very, very quickly is made all publications that used to be mailed available to members. So it used to be, you could get one or the other. If you want to get on the air and not get QST, then you could get on the air. And people are saying, well, I want both. And the league is not ready to publishing is a relatively expensive, old but expensive technology to get the thing printed and mailed out to everybody. And it would have been if we just said we're going to send On the Air and QST to every member, it would have been quite a cost that we weren't ready to bear. So CEO said we'll just make it available electronically. And by the way, NCJ and QEX is also available to every member electronically, so it doesn't have to go in the mail anymore. I don't have the numbers right now about who's opted where. I'm not sure I'm going to see those until we get like a year, into On the Air magazine. I do know that it's wildly popular. I mean, we're just getting so very, very positive feedback. In fact, I haven't heard any negative feedback about On the Air at all, Bob. I haven't, everybody seems to love it, say it's got good content and it's been well edited. And the fact that they're using real new hams to convey some of the stories seems to ring true with a lot of people.
It has been fun to read, and I'm really appreciative that I can get access to QEX now as well.
Maybe we should drill in on that just a bit, because that maybe is a benefit that people don't fully appreciate. Most people look at the ARRL as QST magazine, and now we've got the On the Air thing. But QEX, man, if you're a tinkerer or into the technology piece, QEX is a really good magazine. It's the kind of stuff that goes pretty deep into the technology that the other magazines can't. And then, of course, National Contest Journal is the magazine for contesting too. So if you're into that, that's pretty sweet. And those are all available electronically now.
Right, and the way both of these were born, QST magazine is officially the membership journal, and it has a mix of different types of articles, including contesting, including technology, QEX type of articles, including public service, and so on and so forth. They got their little departments, and everybody gets their certain number of pages. Well, they're the people that love the QEX kind of stuff just want more of it, and if you put too much of that in QST, you get people turning past too many pages and not reading the magazine because it's content that they're not interested in. So the idea was to spin off this bi-monthly publication called QEX that kind of focused on it, and people could subscribe. And if they were really interested, the fact that they were subscribing, like a lot of things, you find out if it's worth the paper it's printed on, if people are willing to pay for it. I mean, that's the bottom line. So if people are willing to subscribe to it, then they could get QEX. And the contest journals, NCJ was the same thing. I mean, it's the Bible for contesting. But if they put all that same information in QST, it would be the same problem. So those two main areas, the experimenters and the high-tech articles that really go deeply into the subject matter, were split off into those two separate publications. And they are now, as I indicated, they're available to all members online. Just go get them and take a look at them. Other questions? I have nowhere I need to be, by the way. I'm here for you guys. So don't worry about keeping it too long.
Jeff, this is Jim White, NC0JW.
Hi, Jim.
mentioned you were a microwave. You mentioned you were a microwaver, and I was curious. In the Western United States, there's this San Bernardino Microwave Society, extremely active in the microwave community, covering most of California, over in Arizona and stuff like that. Is there any group in Colorado similar?
Not that I'm aware of, Jim. Rocky Mountain Ham Radio is using 5 gig
You broke up.
ubiquity dishes and the like to link our DMR sites together, and we run IP over the backbone, and we just link our sites together, and sometimes we've got microwave that'll go from one mountaintop to another mountaintop, and we don't even have a DMR repeater or anything there. We're just using it to to go from node to node at these various mountaintops. I don't know what the bandwidth is off the top of my head, but we got bandwidth to spare. So not only are we running our own networks, our Rocky Mountain Ham networks, DMR networks over that, we're also providing primarily the background for the Colorado connection, and is now running over the Rocky Mountain Ham microwave backbone around the state. And we're continuing to build. We're building out to the West Slope. We do have some links that are not using our own microwave right now. They are using public internet. There's a couple of them. Actually, I can show you this real quickly if I'm able to share. I think I can. Let me get this thing up. Let me find it. There we go. Now let me see how I can share, or if I can share. Yes, I can. And share. There you go. So this is kind of goes away from the ARRL a little bit, but this is the Rocky Mountain Ham microwave network, and as you can see, it's the red links are actual ham microwave or unlicensed microwave, and the purple links are public IP. So we're continuing to build. I think we should go from Methodist Mountain, out down towards the southwest corner. But you got to have mountaintops to be able to do this. And believe it or not, some people charge rent. There's commercial companies on the top of these mountains, and they want us to pay money to be there. So we have to be judicious and make sure we don't overbuild our budget, so to speak. Okay,
excellent. Is there any contest in August and September that any microwavers do around here?
I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, I use microwave during 10 gig. I use 10 gig during the VHF contest. Our organization, Rocky Mountain Ham Radio, we use 10 gig to make contacts during that contest, because just gives us more points.
It seems to our mountains here an excellent platform for getting some distance on some of these microwave contests.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we used to set up out in Lyman, Colorado, and we'd talk 10 gig back to folks in the Denver area without any problems at all, because they'd get some elevation on them, and they could reach us out. I mean, listen to 10 gig going from Denver out to Lyman was pretty cool. Really enjoyed it. It's good, strong signal.
Well, thank you, Jeff.
Sure, my pleasure. Jeff, what's going on with Logbook of the World? I think overall it's a success. It works. People complain it's too hard, but I think to get started, but that's all workable if you stick with it. But it seems to be pretty slow in adopting any new features. It really hasn't changed. Its rate of change is really slow for a computer-based system.
I think for the last 6 to 8 months, that's been absolutely true. I hate to make excuses, but we lost a key IT person at headquarters due to health issues. So that put a crimp on a lot of things IT. Even though Logbook of the World was primarily being, I don't want to say managed, but programmed by a committee, which also consisted of folks that didn't work at headquarters. In the final analysis, it had to run, on headquarters assets. So changes, had to be implemented that way. Logbook of the World was very specifically discussed at both the A&F meeting in January and the board meeting. There is universal concern that it's not currently riding on a platform that's hardened, and that it needs to be integrated more with the overall ARRL infrastructure. As I mentioned earlier, our CEO is very IT-centric, and he has put together a handful of people being led by Director Kristen McIntyre of the Pacific Division, who happens to work for Apple. And she also has 3 of her own companies at the same time. Very smart IT person, not just from the coding level, but from the implementation and from the management level. So she is a fantastic asset to have on the board because she understands this stuff through and through. So our CEO has reached out to her to kind of head up what we're calling Project X right now, because we don't know what that's going to wind up being. But Logbook of the World is one of the primary components that have to fit into this architecture. And we got to get something done, and we can't spend 2 years doing it. We got to get Logbook of the World so that on a regular basis we could just keep adding awards and awards and awards and awards and awards. And that's the whole idea. If we stop doing that, you're right, it's successful. There's everybody and their brother's using it right now, but we got to get everybody and their cousin using it as well. And so it doesn't have universal pickup, but it's very, very popular. And there is a lot of attention that's being focused. We got to move. We can't just talk about it. We got to get things done. Other questions? Lauren, you had a few more questions?
I think everything I wrote down here primarily has been covered, but what I would be interested to know is just sitting here as an ordinary ham, what can we do for you?
Well, as I started to say, at the outset, I'm your servant. I'm here to make sure that you have a voice. If you're a member of the ARRL, what you think is important. Now, the ARRL obviously has to look at things from the 30,000 foot view. And by that, I mean, I got an email from a member who, their entire life, they were parked on a specific HF frequency, and that's where they went. And that was their world. That was their entire world of amateur radio. That's all they did. And when we talked about expanding tech privileges into where this individual parked every night of their life to talk to their buddies, their world was over as far as amateur radio is concerned. All right, because we were taking their frequency and going to use it for something else. And I absolutely understand that point of view, but by the same token, there are so many different aspects of amateur radio, and the league has to look at all of them, and they have to make sure that it's fair and balanced for all members. So what you can do for me is to make sure when you're looking at amateur radio, think about things from the 30,000 foot view. And if it makes sense for amateur, it may not make sense for you personally and what your world is, but is this what's the best thing for amateur radio? Not what's the best thing for ARRL, because the ARRL, that's not what it's all about, doing what's best for it. It's what's best for the members and for amateur radio. And again, remember, the United States does not stand alone in this spectrum. We've got users around the world on HF, obviously not on VHF, but on HF that we need to consult with. So we can't go it alone. when we want to talk about making changes and things of this nature. We got to interact. So just, yes, obviously, call me up, yell at me, tell me I'm an idiot, tell me the league sucks. It's okay. I absolutely do not mind those phone calls, because it's the best thing in the world is to have people say, this is what you need to be doing, and this is where I'm going to lose out on amateur radio, and you need to be paying attention over here. You guys are starting paying attention. And dialogue, that's what it's all about, dialogue. So yeah, keep the 30,000 foot view in mind and talk to me.
Good. Question on the chat. How many life members are there? Do you know how many life members are currently the ARRL?
Not off the top of my head, but I could look that up, and I could send you an email and let you know, so I'll answer that for your next meeting.
Tell you what, that was one of the best investments I ever made 40 plus years ago, when looking at cost escalation over the years. A lot of paper, though, to recycle.
Yeah, look, I got to be honest with you. I'm a life member, right? So I don't pay dues every 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, whatever the heck it is that you can renew for. It's like, okay, ARRL, I gave you my money. Now look, section manager for 10 years and, vice director, and now I'm a director. And when stuff comes in the mail, because they don't necessarily sort it out because I'm a director, so I'll just get the same postcards that everybody else gets. Hey, you need to sign up for Spectrum Defense. And I would look at this and I say, you got my money, man. I'm a life member. You've been, I paid for all of this kind of stuff 20 years ago. Look, it's tongue in cheek when I say that, because obviously I still contribute and I make donations and contribute to the league. But I just kind of have to smile a little bit when I see these mailings come in that ask me for money, and I go, you got my money. I paid a crap load of money for that life membership. And of course, that money has to be, set aside and used year after year. They don't just take it all and spend it up front. They actually have to take it and put it in an account and kind of dole it out a little bit each year. But yeah, good investment. It has been for me too.
So last call to the group. Any more questions for Jeff?
And if you don't want to ask in public, you've got my email address. You got my phone number. If you got QST, page 15 and 16 have the contacts for everybody. Section managers on 16, and page 15 is staff and directors and vice directors. Please don't hesitate. I mean it sincerely. I'm not just this disjointed, name in QST. I'm your servant. I am here to be your voice at the league, and I'll make better decisions if I'm better informed, right? So you don't want me going in there with my opinion necessarily. It's a lot better if I get a diversity of opinions and I know what people think. And trust me, I get one email and I figure that's kind of like getting 20, 30, or 40 emails. So if somebody takes the time to sit down and say something, it makes an impact. And I really look forward to being able to get out to the swap fests and conventions and stuff, so we can do face-to-face eyeball stuff and shake hands. And you see me walking down an aisle at a swap fest, just grab me by the arm and say, "Come over here, I got to talk to you about this stuff." And that's I can't tell you how much I enjoy that. It's the best part of the position, is just sitting there talking to people. So I really enjoy it. Please don't hesitate to contact.
Well, Jeff, thank you very, very much for giving us your evening here tonight. Great information. Glad to hear, a summary, a personal summary like this of what's going on with the league, and sharing what you do, and and the invite to contact you. So, thank you very, very much.
Thanks all. Thanks.
73.
My pleasure. 73.
Jeff.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.